December 20th, 1944. 6:10 a.m. near the snow-choked outskirts of Bastogne, Ardennes Forest, Belgium. The world is still half asleep beneath a low, suffocating winter sky. Snow falls in slow, heavy sheets, muffling everything it touches. It clings to the branches of fir trees, to the shattered stone walls of farmhouses, to the steel hulls of armored vehicles idling along a narrow forest road carved by retreating engineers just days earlier. The temperature sits far below freezing cold enough that every breath drawn by a man outside a vehicle turns instantly into a white cloud that vanishes into the gray air. Inside one of those vehicles, Oberleutnant Karl Heinemann sits in the command position of a Panzer IV Ausf. Its engine rumbling like a restrained beast. The radio set crackles intermittently with static and clipped German transmissions from Kampfgruppe Richter advancing through the sector. The smell inside the tank is a mixture of oil-heated metal, damp wool uniforms and the faint bitterness of cordite residue from earlier skirmishes. Heinemann's gloved hand rests on the edge of the turret ring as he listens to the voice of Hauptmann Erich Richter, his battalion commander, barking orders through the Feldfunkgerät radio net. American resistance in this sector is collapsing. Their lines are fragmented. Push through the forest road and link with Panzer Grenadier Regiment 394. No delays, no hesitation. There is confidence in Richter's voice. The kind of confidence that has grown dangerous in recent weeks. After the initial success of the Ardennes offensive, many German commanders have begun to believe that the American forces are disorganized, reactive, and too slow to adapt to winter warfare. Intelligence reports, filtered through optimistic staff interpretations, reinforce this belief. Resistance is described as scattered, supply lines as strained, morale as uncertain. Inside Heinemann's tank, that belief feels almost physical, like something heavy pressing down on the crew. To his right, gunner Feldwebel Otto Krüger adjusts the sight of the 7.5 centimeter KWK-40 cannon, its long barrel pointing forward through the snow. The weapon is the tank's primary argument, its reason for existing. Without it, the Panzer IV is merely armored transport. With it, it is a predator. Visibility is poor. Krüger mutters more to himself than anyone else. They won't see us before we see them. Driver Unteroffizier Hans Weber laughs quietly from below. They won't even be there. They're running west, like everyone says. Heinemann does not respond immediately. Instead, he studies the forward slit of vision through the armored glass. The forest road bends slightly left, disappearing into a stand of trees heavy with snow. Somewhere beyond that curve lies the next waypoint, a farmhouse reportedly abandoned by American infantry the night before. Reconnaissance claims no armored resistance in the immediate area. Still, something about the silence feels too deliberate, not peaceful, controlled. But that thought is not strong enough to challenge the momentum of belief already embedded in the operation. Behind them, another Panzer IV idles in formation, its engine echoing faintly through the trees. The entire column is moving with disciplined certainty. Crews believe they are advancing into a broken enemy line, finishing what higher command has already decided is a collapsing front. Above them, all unseen artillery from both sides occasionally interrupts the silence. Distant thuds roll through the forest like slow thunder, but even these sounds have begun to lose their psychological weight. Soldiers are becoming accustomed to them, normalizing them, folding them into the background of movement. Heinemann checks the internal status board. Fuel sufficient. Ammunition, full load of armor-piercing and high-explosive shells. Engine temperature stable. Main gun status operational. Everything on paper is correct. The tank lurches forward again as Weber increases throttle. Tracks bite into frozen mud beneath the snow layer, grinding with a rhythmic, metallic churn. The Panzer IV moves like a deliberate shadow through the winter forest, its camouflage netting stiff with frost branches strapped to its hull to break up its silhouette. Krüger leans slightly toward Heinemann. If they do appear, they won't hold. Not in this weather, not against us. Heinemann finally speaks, voice calm but firm. Assume they will appear anyway. A brief silence follows. It is not disagreement, it is acknowledgement of command discipline. Still, Kruger's expression suggests he considers the statement unnecessary, because everything they have seen so far reinforces the opposite idea. American positions retreating, roadblocks abandoned, occasional prisoners captured with little resistance, confused more than defiant. The belief forming across German armored units is simple: the enemy is present but already defeated in spirit. And in war, belief becomes a weapon long before the first shot is fired. The forest tightens around them as they advance. Branches scrape along the turret, snow falls more heavily now, reducing visibility to less than 200 meters in some stretches. The world outside becomes a narrow corridor of gray and white, where every shape could be either terrain or threat. Then, faintly, something changes. Weber eases off the throttle slightly. "Tracks ahead," he says. Heinemann leans forward immediately. "Where?" Weber points with a gloved hand through the driver's periscope. "Left edge of the road. Fresh, not ours." Kruger adjusts his optics. The gun barrel shifts a fraction as the turret rotates slowly. There are, indeed, tracks. Not German, wider spacing, heavier tread impressions, partially filled with fresh snow, meaning they are recent. American armor. The atmosphere inside the tank shifts almost imperceptibly. Not fear yet, not alarm, but recalibration. Kruger exhales slowly. Probably a withdrawal vehicle. Scout, maybe. Heinemann does not answer. His eyes remain fixed forward, because now, for the first time that morning, the forest does not feel empty. And somewhere beyond the next bend in the road, the assumptions that carried them here are about to meet something they were never prepared to fully understand. December 20th, 1944. 6:42 a.m. Ardennes Forest, Belgium. The Panzer IV. Ausf H moves deeper into the frozen corridor of trees, its engine vibration echoing through the hull like a living pulse trapped in steel. Snow continues to fall, but the wind has begun to shift direction, pushing thin sheets of white across the road in irregular bursts. Visibility drops and rises unpredictably, as if the forest itself is breathing. Inside the tank, Oberleutnant Karl Heinemann remains still, his eyes locked on the narrow slit of forward vision. The tire tracks reported earlier are now clearer. Not just one vehicle, multiple passes, heavy enough to compress the frozen ground beneath the snow layer. Heinemann's voice breaks the quiet. "Stop confirming assumption of withdrawal." Feldwebel Otto Kruger adjusts the optics again, frustration creeping into his tone. "If it is not withdrawal, then it is reconnaissance. Either way, it is not a fighting position." But even as he says it, the confidence is thinner than before. The radio suddenly crackles to life. Hauptmann Erich Richter's voice cuts through the static sharper, now less patient. "Advance element reports. Light resistance west of your position. Do not engage unless necessary. Maintain momentum." The American line is disorganized. The word disorganized hangs in the air of the tank like a commandment rather than an observation. Weber, the driver, shifts slightly in his seat. "Still think they're running?" No one answers immediately. Because the tracks outside do not look like retreat, they look like preparation. Controlled movement, tactical repositioning, the kind of movement done by units expecting contact, not fleeing from it. Heinemann studies the forest edge. The trees are thicker here, the road narrowing into a natural choke point. Ideal terrain for ambush if one were planned. He knows this instinctively. Every armored officer does. Yet the larger operational belief system overrides instinct. The offensive must continue. The enemy is collapsing. Any resistance is local, isolated. And so caution becomes secondary to doctrine. A faint, metallic sound interrupts his thoughts. Kruger notices it too. Engine noise. Ahead, the crew falls silent. It is not loud. Not yet, but it is distinct. A low mechanical hum that does not belong to the forest. Not German cadence, not artillery, something steadier, controlled. Heinemann raises his hand slightly. Weber slows the tank further. The column behind them adjusts in response, compressed movement through constrained terrain. The sound of multiple engines now merges into a distant mechanical presence, partially masked by wind and snowfall. Kruger whispers, "Could be armor." American armor. There is a pause before Weber responds. They don't use armor in these woods. Too tight, too slow. Heinemann finally speaks. They are here anyway. The tank rolls forward another 20 meters, then the forest opens slightly. Not into a clearing, but into a widened bend in the road where terrain forces visibility outward. Snow lies undisturbed in patches, but there are signs of disturbance beneath it. Broken branches, flattened brush, scattered debris that could be from earlier movement. And now the engine noise becomes undeniable. Ahead, partially obscured by trees, a shape moves. Low silhouette, wide stance. Tracks biting into frozen ground with deliberate weight. Kruger stiffens instantly. Contact. Heinemann leans forward. His eyes lock onto the shape. It is an American M4 Sherman tank. Not alone. Two more shapes appear behind it, angled across the road, not in retreat formation, but in a staggered defensive alignment that immediately contradicts every assumption the German column has been operating under. Weber instinctively slows further. They're blocking the road. The realization is not dramatic, it is quiet, but it lands heavily. Kruger adjusts elevation but does not fire. Not yet. The range is uncertain, the target partially obscured by trees and snowfall. The Sherman turret begins to rotate. It is not random, it is tracking. Heinemann feels it before he fully understands it. The enemy is not surprised. They are waiting, and worse, they are positioned. Richter's earlier certainty now feels distant, almost fragile. Kruger's voice tightens. They knew we were coming, Weber mutters. That's impossible. But nothing about the scene ahead supports impossibility anymore. The Sherman's turret completes its rotation. A second later, a flash of movement behind it reveals infantry. American soldiers in winter gear moving between trees, establishing spacing and fields of fire with practiced discipline. Not retreating, defending. Heinemann's mind recalculates instantly. This is not a broken line. This is a prepared defensive pocket, possibly part of a larger network of positions that German reconnaissance failed to detect. The implications begin to spread through the tank like cold water. Kruger finally speaks the truth none of them want to say aloud. We are not ahead of them. We are inside their line. Before Heinemann can respond, the Sherman fires. The sound is immediate and overwhelming. A sharp explosive crack that cuts through the forest and punches into the armored world of the Panzer IV. The shell impacts the ground just short of the lead tank, throwing up snow dirt and shattered wood. The shockwave rocks the hull. Weber instinctively reverses half a meter. Hit was short. Kruger is already tracking the firing position. They are ranging us. Heinemann grips the turret edge. His voice is steady but lower now. Return fire only when target is confirmed. But the problem is already clear. The American position is not static. The Shermans are adjusting spacing. Infantry are spreading into flanking positions. This is coordinated defense, not a chance encounter. Another flash, another impact. This one closer. Snow erupts along the right side of the road, peppering the hull with frozen debris. The German column behind begins to slow, compressing into the narrow road, creating a vulnerable concentration of armored vehicles. And for the first time, Heinemann understands the true danger. They are not advancing into a gap. They are advancing into a constructed kill zone, and no one at battalion level has acknowledged it yet. December 20th, 1944, 6:55 a.m. Ardennes Forest, Belgium. The forest erupts into controlled violence as the first exchange of fire settles into a brutal rhythm. Snow is no longer a quiet backdrop. It becomes a moving curtain torn apart by muzzle flashes, tracer fire, and the sudden violent bloom of explosions along the frozen road. Inside the Panzer IV, Aussef H. Oberleutnant Karl Heinemann feels the entire world tighten into the space of metal optics and sound. Another American round strikes nearby. The impact is not a direct hit, but the shock travels through the ground and into the tank's suspension, jolting the crew violently. Feldwebel Otto Kruger finally fires. A P-loaded, he says, voice sharp now stripped of earlier confidence. The 7.5 centimeter KWK-40 cannon roars. The recoil slams backward through the turret ring. Smoke fills the confined interior for a brief moment before the ventilation system struggles to clear it. The shell flies forward through snowfall and disappearing visibility toward the lead M4 Sherman. For a moment, everything pauses. Then the round strikes the Sherman's frontal armor. A bright flash sparks and fragments of metal burst outward, but the enemy tank does not immediately stop moving. Kruger swears under his breath. No penetration. Weber grips the controls tighter. That armor is heavier than intelligence reported. Heinemann does not speak. His eyes are fixed on the battlefield unfolding ahead. The Sherman that was hit continues to move through more cautiously now. Its turret adjusts rapidly, searching for the source of fire. Behind it, another Sherman begins to angle slightly, covering the flank. American infantry are now fully visible, moving between trees in coordinated bursts, using the terrain with discipline that contradicts every German assumption of disorganization. The radio inside Heinemann's tank suddenly bursts with overlapping transmissions. German voices, confused, contacted grid, unclear, heavy armor resistance. Another voice cuts in. Repeat armor strength unknown. This is not a retreating force. Then, Hauptmann Erich Richter louder than before. Hold position only if necessary. Push through if possible. This cannot be a main line. Cannot be a main line. The words feel outdated the moment they are spoken. Kruger reloads. The breech slams shut again. Second target, he says. The turret rotates slightly as he adjusts aim toward the second Sherman. But the Americans fire again first. This time, the round impacts the road directly in front of the German lead tank. The explosion lifts frozen earth and snow into the air, blinding the forward vision slit for seconds. The shockwave causes the entire Panzer IV to rock backward. Weber shouts, "We are being bracketed." Heinemann already knows. This is not random fire. It is ranging fire. Adjustment fire. The enemy is calibrating distance and spacing with deliberate precision. The German column behind them begins to compress further, unable to advance or retreat without exposing themselves to fire. Engines idle. Tracks grind against frozen ground in place. The narrow forest road becomes a funnel of armored steel trapped under observation. Kruger attempts another shot, but visibility is momentarily lost due to snow and debris. Target obscured, he says. Heinemann watches the forest line. Now more shapes are visible. Not just tanks. Anti-tank gun positions, dug into the tree line, concealed under camouflage nets and branches. Muzzle flashes appear intermittently from fixed positions that were invisible minutes ago. They were always there. The realization spreads without words. Weber speaks it first. This was prepared. Kruger replies immediately, almost angrily. How we were supposed to be breaking through a collapsing line. Heinemann finally answers, voice low and controlled. We are not breaking through anything. Another American shell impacts this time, striking a nearby German Panzer, IV in the column behind. The explosion is visible even through snowfall, a brief violent bloom of fire and smoke that disappears into the white forest air. The radio crackles again, a different voice now. Panicked German infantry. They are everywhere. We are taking fire from the left flank. We did not see armor positions before entry. Another transmission overlaps. Request withdrawal. Repeat withdrawal is necessary. But there is no coherent command response. Only fragmented instructions competing over frequency channels. Inside Heinemann's tank, the air feels heavier. Not physically, but structurally. As if the battlefield itself has shifted shape around them. Kruger leans slightly forward. If we stay here, we will be destroyed in place. Weber, still gripping the controls, whispers, if we move forward, we enter their guns. The truth is simple and suffocating. Forward is fire. Backward is fire. The road is no longer a route. It is a trap. Heinemann looks through the vision slit again. The Sherman ahead is no longer alone. A second has repositioned, creating overlapping fields of fire. Infantry are advancing through tree cover on both sides, tightening the engagement envelope. This is not a meeting engagement. It is containment. And somewhere in the distance beyond the immediate chaos, German commanders are still believing they are pushing into a weak point. Heinemann makes a decision that will define everything that follows. Prepare to maneuver off-road, he orders. Kruger turns sharply. Into the forest. Yes, Heinemann replies. We cannot stay on the road. Weber hesitates. We risk immobilization. Heinemann's voice hardens. We are already in greater risk here. Outside, the sound of engines intensifies as more Shermans reposition. The American line is tightening, not expanding. And for the first time, the German tank crew understands that survival will not come from firepower alone. It will come from movement and adaptation, even if that means abandoning everything they thought a tank was supposed to do. December 20th, 1944. 7:08 a.m. Ardennes Forest, Belgium. The moment the Panzer IV leaves the forest road, the world changes from structured movement into violent uncertainty. Weber forces the tank's tracks into the snow-covered undergrowth, and the machine immediately protests. Frozen branches snap against the hull, hidden rocks and tree roots bite into the suspension. The engine roars louder as resistance increases each meter forward, costing more power, more stability, more control. Inside the turret, Oberleutnant Karl Heinemann braces himself as the vehicle tilts slightly to the right. Kruger adjusts his sight instinctively. "We are losing mobility efficiency. Terrain is too dense," Heinemann replies without looking away from the vision slit. Remaining on the road was worse. Behind them, the sound of the main engagement intensifies. The road they abandoned is now fully engaged in fire. American Shermans continue to dominate the bend in the forest, their positions shifting in a coordinated pattern that compresses German movement into predictable lanes of destruction. German tanks still on the road attempt to respond. One fires blindly through snowfall. The return fire is immediate. A bright impact tears into its side armor. The explosion is not just destructive, it is final. The vehicle shudders, then stops moving entirely. Smoke rising in thick black columns that contrast sharply with the white forest. Kruger watches it for half a second before turning away. That was the second vehicle in column 3. Weber mutters, "They are picking us apart." Heinemann does not respond. His focus is forward into the trees. The decision to leave the road was necessary, but it comes with consequences. They are only now beginning to understand. Off-road movement removes them from the enemy's prepared firing geometry, but it also removes structure coordination and visibility between friendly units. Radio contact becomes unstable as terrain interferes with transmission. The dense forest absorbs and distorts signals. German units begin to lose situational cohesion. A fragmented transmission cuts through, lead elements off-road. Unable to maintain formation, visibility 0, request guidance. Then another voice. Enemy armor flanking through trees. Cannot confirm numbers. Then silence. Heinemann grips the headset tighter. "We are losing the formation." Kruger responds immediately. Formation is already gone. The tank lurches again as Weber navigates between two thick pines. Snow collapses off branches onto the hull, temporarily obscuring periscope vision. Then something changes in the forest ahead. Movement, not random, not chaotic. Structured movement. American infantry appear between the trees at close range, not rushing, not retreating, advancing in controlled spacing using trunks as cover points. Their rifles are raised, but they are not firing yet. They are waiting for the coordination. Kruger reacts first. Infantry left front. The turret swings. He fires. The shell impacts the tree line. Snow and bark explode outward. One figure disappears into the smoke and debris, but the rest do not break formation. Instead, they adjust, spacing continuing forward movement while signaling positions. Heinemann sees it clearly now. This is not disorganized infantry reacting to armored breakthrough. This is infantry supporting armor containment. Weber suddenly shouts. Armor ahead. A second Sherman emerges between trees at an angle that suggests it was already positioned to intercept off-road movement. Its turret rotates directly toward them. Kruger tries to traverse faster, but the terrain is uneven. The tank is partially tilted, slowing turret alignment. "Cannot fully track target," he says. The Sherman fires. The round strikes the ground just in front of the Panzer IV, throwing snow and debris upward. The blast shakes the hull violently, and for a moment the driver loses visual reference. Weber shouts, "We are exposed here." Heinemann understands the misjudgment fully now. They believed leaving the road would reduce exposure. Instead, it has shifted them into secondary firing zones that were not visible from the main route. The forest is not empty. It is layered. The enemy did not rely on a single defensive line. They built depth into the terrain itself. Kruger reloads quickly. "We need to push through this gap." Heinemann studies the space between trees ahead. It is narrow, uneven, and partially blocked by fallen logs. But it is the only visible path forward. Move, he orders. Weber hesitates for half a second, then increases throttle. The tank surges forward. Branches scrape violently against the turret. The hull tilts again as it crosses uneven ground. Inside, every crew member braces against the sudden motion. Then another Sherman appears to the right flank. It was not there moments ago. Or rather, it was always there, hidden behind terrain, masking in forest density. Kruger reacts instantly, firing again. The shot lands short. The Sherman fires back. This time the impact is closer. The explosion rocks the Panzer IV sideways, and for a moment the crew feels the vehicle lose traction. Weber shouts, "We are stuck for a second." Tracks spin against frozen soil beneath snow cover. The tank struggles for forward movement. Heinemann senses the danger immediately. Immobilization in this terrain means death. "Reverse." "Slightly," he orders. Weber attempts it. The tank groans under stress but begins to free itself. Kruger keeps the turret rotating between threats. We have at least 2 armor contacts, possibly more adjusting through forest cover. Heinemann finally acknowledges what the battlefield has become. It is not a front line. It is a 3-dimensional engagement space where visibility is partial. Movement is unpredictable, and every assumption about distance and direction is unreliable. The German expectation of a linear battlefield has collapsed, and in its place is something far more dangerous. A network of controlled positions designed to adapt to movement rather than resist it. Heinemann speaks quietly. "We misread the terrain." No one argues, because the truth is now visible in every direction. And ahead through the trees, the forest tightens again. December 20th, 1944. 7:21 a.m. Ardennes Forest, Belgium. The Panzer IV pushes forward through the narrowing forest gap, its engine strained to the edge of mechanical endurance. Snow clings to the hull in uneven layers, melting slightly where hot exhaust vents release heat, then freezing again into rough armor like a second skin. The ground beneath the tracks is unstable now, a mix of frozen soil, hidden roots, and shattered branches that offer no reliable traction. Inside the turret, Oberleutnant Karl Heinemann senses the shift before anyone speaks it aloud. The battlefield is no longer reacting to them. It is anticipating them. Feldwebel Otto Kruger adjusts the sight while speaking in a lower controlled voice. "We are being guided into narrower corridors. Every time we change direction, they are already there." Weber, still fighting the controls, responds without looking back. "That is not possible. They cannot predict movement through this terrain." Heinemann does not answer immediately. His eyes remain fixed on the forward slit, where the forest no longer feels random. Tree density changes in patterns. Openings appear and disappear in ways that suggest deliberate spacing rather than natural formation. Then another Sherman appears ahead, not moving into position, already positioned, waiting. Kruger reacts instantly, but his voice carries something new now, not urgency alone. Recognition. This is the 3rd time they have cut us off in advance. The tank fires first this time. The shell strikes near the Sherman's position, exploding into snow and bark. But instead of withdrawing, the American tank shifts, slightly maintaining its angle, while another unseen position opens fire from the left flank. A round impacts the Panzer IV's side armor. The hull shakes violently. Weber shouts, "We are being crossfired." Heinemann grips the turret edge tighter. The realization that has been forming since the first contact now becomes undeniable. The American positions are not reacting individually. They are coordinating spatial control. Each German movement is being met with pre-positioned response points, not improvised fire. This is not a defensive line in the traditional sense. It is a layered system of overlapping fields designed to trap armored movement within predictable corridors. Kruger reloads quickly, but his hands are now slower than before. Not from hesitation, but from the weight of understanding. "We are not fighting units," he says quietly. "We are fighting a system." A sudden burst of radio static interrupts him. German transmissions overlap again, more chaotic than before. Multiple armored contacts. Visibility compromised. We are surrounded by fire zones, not clear enemy lines. Another voice panicked. "We cannot distinguish front from flank anymore." Then silence. The implication spreads through Heinemann's mind like ice. The command structure still believes this is a breakthrough operation, but the reality on the ground no longer matches any operational map. Weber suddenly shouts, "We have no clear exit path." The tank slows slightly as the forest ahead becomes denser, almost unnatural in its closure. Snowfall thickens, reducing visibility to short bursts between tree trunks. Kruger peers through optics. Left side is blocked. Right side is active fire zone. Forward is unknown contact. He pauses, then adds quietly, "We are inside their control space." Another impact strikes the rear of the tank, not penetrating, but strong enough to jolt the crew forward. Dust and debris fall from interior fittings. Heinemann makes a decision. "Stop forward advance," he orders. "We stabilize here and reassess." Weber hesitates. "If we stop, they will range us again." Heinemann responds immediately. "If we keep moving, we remain inside their targeting geometry." The tank slows to a near halt behind a cluster of fallen trees. Engine idling, exhaust visible as a faint plume in the cold air. Outside, the battlefield continues to breathe around them. American infantry movements become more visible again, weaving between trees with coordination that suggests communication beyond what German forces can easily intercept. Occasional radio bursts from American side are too distant and distorted to understand, but their timing aligns with armored adjustments. Kruger lowers his voice. "They are adjusting to us in real time," Weber responds bitterly. "So we stop moving, and we die here instead." No one answers immediately, because both outcomes now seem equally possible. Heinemann studies the terrain again. What once looked like random forest is now clearly segmented, not marked, not visible in any conventional sense, but functionally structured. Each open space leads into a controlled angle of fire. Each narrow path leads into a secondary position. The Germans did not enter a defensive line. They entered a designed engagement environment, a trap that only becomes visible once it is already closed. Kruger suddenly stiffens. "Listen." Everyone falls silent. At first, only wind and distant engine noise are audible. Then something else. Tracks moving. "Close, too close," Weber whispers. "That is not ours." Heinemann already knows. The sound is coming from the right flank, beyond the tree line. Another Sherman repositioning unseen. Kruger rotates the turret immediately, but terrain blocks full traversal. "Cannot acquire target," he says. Then the shot comes. The impact is not direct, but close enough to shake the tank violently again. Snow explodes upward, and for a brief moment, visibility collapses entirely. When it clears, the realization is immediate. They are no longer probing the enemy line. The enemy is closing the space around them. Heinemann's voice is calm but different now. "Finalizing. We are no longer advancing." A pause. Then he adds, "We are contained." Outside, the forest continues its silent coordination. And the tank that once believed it was breaking through now understands it is being slowly reduced in options. One movement at a time. December 20th, 1944. 7:36 a.m. Ardennes, Forest, Belgium. The Panzer IV sits nearly motionless among broken trees, its engine idling with a strained, uneven rhythm that echoes through the steel interior like a warning the crew cannot escape. Snow falls more heavily now, collecting on the turret, softening the outline of the vehicle from above, while inside it feels anything but soft. Every vibration is sharp, every sound amplified by tension. Oberleutnant Karl Heinemann listens to the radio first. What comes through is no longer structured command. It is fragments, armor contact everywhere. "Cannot maintain line." They are inside the gaps. Then silence broken only by static and overlapping voices that no longer form coherent orders. Feldwebel Otto Kruger lowers his headset slightly. Command does not understand what is happening. Weber, still gripping the controls, answers without turning. Or they understand and cannot admit it. Heinemann does not respond. His eyes remain fixed on the forward slit, where the forest is no longer simply terrain. It is presence. Every tree line feels occupied, every gap feels watched. Then, without warning, a distant explosion rolls through the forest behind them. Not close enough to strike them directly, but close enough to signal another German vehicle being eliminated. Kruger closes his eyes briefly. "That is the fourth," Weber whispers. We cannot keep losing tanks like this. Heinemann finally speaks. We are not losing tanks randomly. He pauses, choosing words carefully. We are being reduced in movement space. A silence follows that is heavier than the engine noise. The realization is no longer theoretical. It is physical. The tank feels it in every direction. It is not allowed to go. Forward is blocked by overlapping fire. Left flank is observed, right flank is contested, rear movement is unstable due to damaged ground and destroyed vehicles. The battlefield is no longer a front. It is a cage forming in real time. Kruger adjusts the sight again, though there is still no clear target. We need a breakthrough point, a single weak position. Weber responds immediately. There is no weak position. Every direction has fire. Then, as if confirming his words, another Sherman fires from the tree line. The shot impacts a fallen log just meters ahead, sending splinters of frozen wood across the snow. The message is clear. Forward movement is being measured, not guessed. Heinemann watches the impact zone closely. They are adjusting fire based on our hesitation. Kruger looks toward him. Meaning what? They are not only reacting to movement, Heinemann says quietly. They are reacting to intent. That statement changes the air inside the tank. Weber finally turns his head slightly. Intent cannot be measured in combat. But even as he says it, another shot lands slightly closer than the previous one, as if proving the opposite. Kruger reloads but does not fire immediately. If they are reading our movement patterns, then staying still is also predictable. Heinemann nods once. Yes, the implication is immediate and suffocating. There is no safe behavior left. Movement leads to exposure. Stillness leads to targeting. Even delay becomes part of the enemy's calculation. The radio crackles again, this time weaker. A German voice, distant and panicked. We are attempting breakout east. Heavy resistance. Armor not visible until engagement range. Then a second voice overlaps. We did not see them until it was too late. Kruger grips the headset tighter. This is happening across the sector, Weber speaks quietly. Then this is not just our position. Heinemann finishes the thought. It is the entire penetration corridor. Another explosion echoes from the forest to their left. This one closer. The ground shakes slightly. Snow falls from branches above the tank, briefly obscuring vision. When it clears, something has changed. The enemy is closer, not advancing openly, but repositioning through cover. Infantry movements become visible between trees at shorter distances now. The Shermans are no longer only ahead. They are appearing at angles that suggest encirclement is tightening. Kruger notices first. Left rear movement. He rotates the turret partially, but cannot fully engage due to terrain obstruction. Weber reacts instinctively. We are being surrounded. Heinemann does not deny it. Instead, he gives an order that reflects the shift in reality. We abandon static thinking. We move in short bursts only. No extended exposure. Kruger nods quickly. Toward where? Heinemann looks at the terrain again. There is no obvious answer anymore, but one direction shows slightly less density of enemy presence. Not absence, but delay in reinforcement. Northwest gap, he says. Short movement, then reassess. Weber hesitates only briefly before increasing throttle. The tank lurches forward again, breaking its stillness. Immediately, the battlefield reacts. A Sherman fires from the right flank. The round misses but lands close enough to shake the vehicle off balance. Another shot follows from ahead, forcing Weber to adjust direction mid-movement. The Panzer IV becomes unstable, sliding slightly on frozen ground beneath snow cover. Kruger fires once during movement. The shot disappears into trees without confirmed impact. He curses under his breath. We cannot stabilize enough to aim properly. Heinemann watches the forest carefully. The enemy is responding faster than before. Their repositioning is tightening. The window of movement is shrinking. Then Weber speaks, voice tense. We are running out of space. Heinemann understands. Not ammunition, not fuel, space. The battlefield itself is contracting around them, each movement triggering immediate counter-positioning. The realization is no longer tactical. It is existential. And ahead, the forest closes again. December 20th, 1944. 7:52 a.m. Ardennes Forest, Belgium. The The Panzer IV moves in short broken surges through the snow-covered woodland, each burst of motion followed by immediate hesitation as the crew reassesses the shifting battlefield around them. The engine strains under constant throttle changes, producing a deep, uneven roar that vibrates through the hull plates and into the bones of the men inside. Oberleutnant Karl Heinemann no longer thinks in terms of attack or defense, only distance, and shrinking distance at that. Feldwebel Otto Krüger keeps the turret slightly offset, unable to commit fully to any direction because every angle of the forest now contains potential threat. His voice is tight. We are losing synchronization with the rest of the column. I cannot hear half the units anymore. Weber answers without looking away from his periscope. They are either dead or off frequency. Heinemann listens to the radio again, but what returns is almost meaningless now. Static, fragmented commands, occasional panicked reports that cut off mid-sentence. The battalion-level structure that once coordinated the advance has degraded into isolated pockets of resistance and confusion. The assumption of a continuous breakthrough has collapsed into disconnected survival zones. Another distant explosion echoes through the forest. Krüger counts silently. 5th confirmed loss. Weber swallows. That cannot be right. We still have strength in the column. Heinemann interrupts him. Not as a column. A pause follows. Then he continues, as isolated vehicles inside a controlled engagement space. The words settle heavily inside the turret. Outside, the forest is no longer simply terrain. It has become layered with invisible pressure. Movement is restricted not by physical barriers, but by fire geometry that adapts faster than German repositioning. The Panzer IV pushes forward again into what appears to be a slightly more open corridor between trees. For a brief moment, visibility improves, and then immediately becomes dangerous. Krüger reacts first. Multiple contacts ahead. 3 Sherman tanks are now visible at staggered depths through the trees. Not aligned in a straight defensive line, but positioned to overlap fields of fire. Infantry move between them in controlled spacing, adjusting positions based on German movement rather than fixed placement. Weber slows instinctively. They are shaping the corridor. Heinemann studies it. He understands now that every time they move, the enemy does not simply respond. The enemy redefines the space around them. Krüger raises his voice slightly. We cannot engage all 3 at once from this position. Weber responds quickly. Then we bypass left. Heinemann does not answer immediately. He is watching the left side of the forest. It appears less occupied, but only slightly. That difference now feels intentional rather than natural. Before he can decide, the lead Sherman fires. The round impacts the ground between trees, not hitting the tank, but cutting off the forward path with a burst of snow and debris. A second Sherman adjusts immediately, turret tracking their movement. Krüger speaks with controlled urgency. They are predicting our decision points. Heinemann finally acknowledges what that means. They are not waiting for us to choose, he says quietly. They are waiting for every option we could choose. Weber grips the controls tighter. Then there is no decision left. Another impact strikes nearby, closer than before. The blast rocks the vehicle sideways, forcing a momentary correction in balance. The tank is no longer advancing. It is reacting. Every movement is reactive. Every path is pre-contested. Krüger attempts a shot at the nearest Sherman, but the terrain prevents full alignment. The round goes wide again. He exhales sharply. We are firing blind into structured positions. Weber suddenly speaks, voice strained. We need to break through one point. Just one. Heinemann looks at the battlefield again, but the structure has changed. There is no singular point anymore, only overlapping denial zones. Then the radio emits one final fragment from battalion command. Fallback impossible. Road is cut. Repeat, road is cut. Then silence. Complete. Krüger lowers the headset slowly. So the retreat route is gone. Weber laughs once, but it is empty. There was never a retreat route. Heinemann does not correct him, because the truth has already overtaken doctrine. The original German plan assumed rapid penetration through weak resistance followed by exploitation of rear areas. But that assumption depended on mobility, surprise, and fragmented enemy coordination. None of those conditions exist here anymore. Instead, they have entered a structured resistance system that transforms movement into exposure and hesitation into targeting data. Weber attempts another forward push. The tank moves 2 meters, then stops abruptly as the ground becomes unstable, partially cratered and softened by repeated impacts. Kruger immediately reacts. We are losing traction again. Heinemann watches the forest ahead carefully. A Sherman appears again, closer than before. Too close for comfort. Its turret is already aligned, Weber whispers. We are trapped in their engagement radius. The shot comes immediately. This time the impact is not distant. It strikes near the front suspension. The Panzer IV jolts violently. Inside, the crew is thrown forward against restraints and metal surfaces. For a moment, movement ceases completely. Weber tries to restart forward motion. The tracks spin but gain no purchase. Kruger stares at the forward slit. We are immobilizing. Heinemann finally speaks with absolute clarity. The plan is gone. No one responds. Because there is nothing left of it to defend. Only survival inside a space that is shrinking with every passing second. December 20th, 1944. 8:07 a.m. Ardennes, Forest, Belgium. The Panzer IV sits half buried in churned snow and shattered earth, its tracks spinning intermittently against frozen soil that no longer responds to power alone. Steam rises in uneven bursts from the engine vents, mixing with cold air and forming a ghost-like haze around the immobilized vehicle. The forest around it feels closer now, tighter, as if the trees themselves have leaned inward to observe what remains. Inside the turret, Oberleutnant Karl Heinemann does not look away from the forward slit. Everything has slowed, but nothing has stopped. Feldwebel Otto Kruger keeps his hands on the firing controls, even though he knows the next shot may not change anything fundamental. His voice is quieter now. Main gun still operational, ammunition remaining. Weber checks the drive controls again, more out of habit than expectation. Tracks are digging in deeper. We are not moving forward or backward anymore. Heinemann finally speaks, and when he does, it is no longer in tactical terms. Then we stop trying to move the vehicle as a vehicle. A silence follows. Kruger turns slightly. What does that mean? Heinemann studies the forest ahead. Sherman tanks are no longer fully visible, but their presence is undeniable. Occasional movement between trees, the brief reflection of metal, the disciplined spacing of infantry tightening the perimeter. The engagement is no longer a series of encounters. It is a maintained pressure system. We use what still functions, Heinemann says. We become stationary fire, not movement. Weber exhales sharply. A disabled tank turned into a bunker. Heinemann does not correct him, because that is exactly what it has become. Kruger adjusts the sight carefully. If they close further, we will not have time for repeated shots. Heinemann replies. Then we make every shot decisive. Outside, the first Sherman reappears through the trees, cautiously advancing but not rushing. It is no longer probing randomly. It is tightening the final arc of control. Infantry move behind it, maintaining distance, covering angles that prevent escape attempts. Kruger fires. The shell strikes a tree line just beside the advancing Sherman, forcing it to pause and adjust position. Snow and splinters erupt into the air, briefly obscuring visibility. Weber mutters. They are testing how much resistance remains. Heinemann watches closely. They are confirming we are fixed. A second Sherman appears at a different angle, further confirming the encirclement. It does not rush. It positions itself deliberately, cutting off any theoretical path of exit. Kruger reloads again. We cannot engage all directions simultaneously from here, Weber responds bitterly. We cannot move to engage any direction either. Another round strikes near the rear of the tank. The impact shakes the hull but does not penetrate. Still, it reinforces the reality that mobility is gone. Every external angle is now reachable by enemy fire. Heinemann listens carefully to the battlefield sounds. Engines, movement, radio bursts from distant German units that are now almost entirely disconnected from each other. The offensive has dissolved into isolated resistance pockets. Whatever larger plan existed at dawn has been overwritten by ground-level reality. Kruger suddenly speaks. We are not being destroyed quickly. Weber looks at him. That is supposed to be reassuring. Kruger shakes his head. No, it means they are controlling pace. Heinemann understands immediately. The enemy is not rushing to eliminate them. There is no urgency. Instead, there is structure. Pressure applied in controlled increments. Each adjustment limits movement further without risking unnecessary exposure. It is containment by design, not improvisation. Weber tries the controls again, forcing maximum power into the tracks. The engine roars louder, but the tank only shifts slightly, digging deeper into the churned ground. He stops. We are embedded. Kruger fires again at a fleeting target between trees. The shot connects with nothing decisive. The enemy remains coordinated, unbroken in spacing and discipline. Then the radio, faint but still alive, emits a final German transmission. All units west corridor. Breakout no longer viable. Independent survival advised. The message cuts off. No follow-up, no command continuity. Just abandonment of structure. Kruger lowers the headset slowly. That is it then. Weber leans back slightly. We were never breaking through anything. Heinemann finally shifts his gaze slightly, not toward defeat, but toward assessment. No, he says. We broke into something we did not recognize as resistance. Outside, the Sherman tanks do not close in rapidly. Instead, they complete their positioning, a final tightening of angles. Infantry settle into cover. The forest becomes still again, but not empty. Kruger speaks quietly. We can still fire until ammunition is gone. Heinemann nods once. Yes. Weber asks, and then no one answers immediately, because the answer is already visible in the stillness outside. The tank is no longer part of a maneuver. It is a fixed point inside a completed containment. Heinemann looks forward one last time. The battlefield has stopped expanding. It has finished shaping itself around them, and there is no longer any gap left to recover.